Hi, welcome to Movie Review Mom. Today I am doing a movie review for They Shall Not Grow Old. I actually just walked in the door from the movie theater and I got to see it here in Las Vegas where I live. It's only playing in a few theaters for a few nights before Christmas, and then I think only a scattering of places and times again after Christmas. So if you are able, I think that this is a great movie that you should see. It's rated R because you see a lot of death and bloody images and violence because it's war. The movie's about World War I. I should say that off the bat. It's 99 minutes long, and it is truly a cinematic marvel. Peter Jackson, who's the writer-director of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is amazing, and he won several Oscars for that trilogy, specifically the third one in the series. He is amazing, and he actually was approached by a museum with some 100-year-old footage from World War I, and they asked him to put together a movie and to use this footage in some unique new way. He had no idea what that meant, and so he just started poring over hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of footage until what he came up with ultimately was a colorized version that brings these young boys and young men who fought so bravely in World War I truly to life. It feels almost like a modern day war movie in that sense, that they feel real. It's a very sobering movie, and it's actually in the style of a documentary, obviously. They use voices from real veterans who survived the war, veterans audio that was recorded back in the 50s and 60s, and obviously those men are now long gone as well. And the footage is just remarkable. I didn't even know that they had footage of World War I. It was interesting because people had been to the movie theater, but nobody had really seen an actual movie camera. And so when the filmmakers, the people that gathered this original footage, were out there on the field with the soldiers, there are a lot of blank stares, a lot of, like, what's going on, because they've never seen anybody actually film a movie. Their faces are so innocent. And what he focuses on is the British, meaning the UK. He's got British soldiers, Welsh soldiers, Scottish soldiers in skirts, no less, in their kilts out there on the battlefield. And he really concentrates on those British soldiers on the Western Front during World War I. At the end of the movie, he actually talks for 30 minutes at the end of the rolling credits about how the movie was made and shows some of the footage that wasn't included in the movie and talks about the technical feats that were accomplished in order to create this film, which were truly remarkable. The movie itself is... I'd probably give it maybe a B plus. It's because it's a documentary, it doesn't flow. It's cut up a little bit because they're pieces of different films. But in terms of technical achievement, I would definitely give it an A. I looked on Rotten Tomatoes before I left for the movie theater, and it has a 98% approval rate from people who'd seen it, which is really amazing. I just rarely see the score that high. And I loved that there were that many people out there who wanted to see a historical movie from World War I. History buffs will absolutely love this movie. What was funny is when I first got to the theater, I turned the corner and there was this massive line, and I was like, wow, that's amazing that there are this many people that are interested in our ancestors and our heritage and World War I and history and, all of that. Well, no, they were actually in line to see Aquaman. And unfortunately, the theater that I saw this movie in was actually pretty sparse, which made me sad. It was interesting to listen to Peter Jackson at the end of the movie talk about how he didn't have any great deep meaning or big moral lesson. The film speaks for itself. There's this humanity that is just overwhelming, and And yet Peter Jackson said what he wants people to take from the movie is to actually look at your own family tree, because he said there's a very good chance that one of your ancestors fought in that war. And in fact, that's why I was particularly interested in seeing it, because my husband's grandfather did fight in World War I. He managed to live through the war. He survived, obviously, because my husband is alive. But anyway, he, however, was affected by mustard gas. He was a runner that would run through some of the trenches and get to the other side and try to communicate messages. And they shot the area with mustard gas. And so my husband said for the rest of his life, he really was affected by that. He had poor health. And, that was just one of the casualties of the war, was how it affected him and his life after the war. The British Army had recruited everyone from its empire. So there were people from China, Africa, India. Not that America was the empire back then, but Americans also joined the war. There were all races and colors fighting in what was truly a world war. And it was interesting because as he interviewed these British, or we heard the footage of the voices from the British vets who survived. They're so British because, first of all, they had horrible teeth. Sorry, you Brits. I love you. I love England. I love Scotland and Wales. But the dentistry was horrible back then and hasn't improved much. I shouldn't say that. But anyway, but they had this, stiff upper lip and this attitude that is so impressive. They would say things that were very understated. I mean, this was war. And as I mentioned, you see dead bodies and body parts blown up, and, it's horrific. And yet the audio that you hear that accompanies some of this visual footage is, it was quite unpleasant to be shot at, really downplaying the horrors of it. And another part of the humanity that impressed me was how when they would capture some of the German soldiers, there wasn't this animosity and hatred that we often saw in World War II, and even in other modern wars, but kind of a friendship and camaraderie, that they all agreed that it was kind of a dumb war and they just wanted it to be over with, and they became friends, and they admired and respected the bravery of each other. And I thought that was really interesting. They didn't complain, which is another attitude that has changed, unfortunately, over the years. We feel so entitled to everything, and we all complain about everything, and everyone in the world is so angry with everything. But back then, these, I guess, I'm assuming that it's universal because of the way the British soldiers were talking, but they said that the German soldiers agreed that it was their duty, they just did it. And again, that stiff upper lip, cheerio and chin up and all of that, that they just did it. And they gratefully accepted the horrible food that they got, the horrible living conditions, and they just said that was a part of what their duty was and what they were supposed to do, and they were glad to represent their country. And I was really impressed by that. There are some disgusting scenes about, maggots and lice and rats, and, not to mention all of the dead bodies and that kind of stuff. It's war and it's brutal. But there were some fun moments in between too, and some singing. And so many times the soldiers who were right there on the front lines were smiling, because the camera was filming them, and they were so happy for a split second to not be thinking of the dangers of war, the situation that they were in. Anyway, it's a fascinating movie and very well done. And just 3 cheers for the cinematic marvel that Peter Jackson is. I'm so impressed with him. And he said that out of all of his movies, this is his most personal movie because his grandfather also served in that war. And some of the other filmmakers that he was working with had ancestors who had also fought in the war. And so they were paying tribute to their ancestors and really paying tribute to a generation that was willing to sacrifice for the greater good. And I always appreciate movies that have messages like that. if you get a chance, try to see this movie, and it is rated R, so I don't necessarily recommend it for children. However, if you find it appropriate, then just be forewarned. You know, they're going to see some ghastly images, but it is part of our history, and we need to learn from our history so as not to repeat it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review, and as always, please subscribe to my channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this movie if you're able to see it. I know eventually it'll come out on DVD and not live stream, but streaming and all of that. So whenever you get a chance to watch this movie review, comment below and let me know what you thought about it. Bye for now. See you at the movies.